The Secret of Love. A love story. A stranger's message. Zoya was a simple girl who lived a peaceful life. She enjoyed the little things, attending university, chatting with friends, and spending time with her mother. Her life was predictable, safe, and happy. Nothing unusual ever happened to her. But one day, something changed. That morning, as she unlocked her phone, she found an unexpected message from an unknown number. The words were simple, yet strangely personal. "Your smile is beautiful. Keep smiling like this, always." Zoya frowned. Who could have sent this? She quickly dismissed it as a random text or a mistake. Perhaps someone had messaged the wrong number. She decided to ignore it and carried on with her day. But then, the messages didn't stop. Every day, at different times, she received similar texts. "You looked lost in thought today. Hope everything is okay. You wore blue today. It suits you. I hope you had a good day, Zoya." Now, she was growing uneasy. Who was this person? How did they know her name? At first, she thought it might be a prank by one of her friends. She casually mentioned the messages during lunch, expecting someone to laugh and confess. But her friends looked just as puzzled as she was. "Maybe it's just a secret admirer," her best friend Aisha suggested, winking. Zoya rolled her eyes, but deep down, a small part of her was curious. What if it really is someone who likes me, she thought. But then, a chilling realization hit her. This person wasn't just texting her. They were watching her. The messages weren't random compliments. They described her actions, her outfits, and her whereabouts. Someone was observing her from a distance. A shiver ran down her spine. She needed to find out who this was. Zoya was determined to uncover the truth, but she had no idea that this search would change her life forever. The first meeting. Zoya couldn't get the messages out of her mind. Every time she stepped outside, she felt as if someone was watching her. Every time she checked her phone, she feared another message would appear. Days passed, and the mysterious texts continued. The sender never revealed their identity, never asked anything from her, just simple, personal messages that made it clear they were always near. One evening, as she sat in the university library, her phone buzzed again. "You look beautiful when you're lost in thought." Zoya's heart skipped a beat. She looked around, her eyes scanning the quiet library. There were students sitting at different tables, reading, writing, working on their laptops. Some were alone, some in groups. Someone here was watching her. A wave of nervousness washed over her. Her fingers tightened around her phone as she took a deep breath. This was her chance. If she wanted answers, she had to act now. She quickly typed a reply for the first time. "Who are you?" Her heart pounded as she hit send. The 3 little dots appeared, showing that the person was typing. A few seconds later, a reply flashed on her screen. "Look outside." Zoya's breath caught in her throat. Slowly, hesitantly, she turned her head toward the large glass window of the library. The view overlooked the campus courtyard, where few students were walking or sitting on benches. And then she saw him. A tall figure stood near a lamppost, dressed in black, his face partially hidden in the shadows. He wasn't looking at her, but there was something about his posture, calm, confident, as if he knew she had seen him. Her phone buzzed again. "Finally, you see me?" A chill ran down her spine. Zoya swallowed hard. This was it. the moment she had been waiting for. Who was he? What did he want? There was only one way to find out. She took a deep breath, gathered her courage, and stood up. She was going to meet him. The stranger's truth. Zoya's heartbeat quickened as she stood up from her chair. Every step she took toward the library exit felt heavier than the last. Was she really about to meet this stranger? The person who had been watching her, texting her, and leaving her restless for days? As she pushed the glass door open, a cool breeze hit her face. The courtyard was dimly lit by the evening lamps, casting long shadows on the ground. She took a deep breath and looked toward the lamppost. He was still there. The man stood motionless, his hands tucked into the pockets of his black jacket. Though his face was partially hidden in the dim light, Zoya could feel his gaze on her. Her phone vibrated. Another message. "Come closer, Zoya. Don't be afraid." A shiver ran down her spine. How did he know she was afraid? But she didn't turn back. She was done with being scared. She was done with unanswered questions. Gathering her courage, she walked toward him. As she got closer, her eyes adjusted to the darkness, and she finally got a clear look at his face. He was young, probably in his early 20s, with sharp features and deep, intense eyes. There was something mysterious about him, something that made her feel both nervous and intrigued at the same time. For a moment, there was silence. Then, finally, she spoke. "Who are you?" Her voice was firm but slightly shaky. He gave her a small smile, almost as if he had been expecting this question. "Someone who has been watching over you for a long time," he said in a calm voice. Her brows furrowed. "Watching over me? Why? What do you mean?" He let out a slow breath, as if choosing his words carefully. "Because your life is not as ordinary as you think, Zoya. There are things about your past, things you don't know yet." Zoya's stomach twisted. "What things?" The stranger hesitated. "I can't tell you everything right now, but I need you to trust me, because very soon you're going to be in danger." Her breath caught. Danger? From whom? He glanced around as if making sure no one was listening, then leaned in slightly. "There are people who don't want you to know the truth, and they're already watching you." Zoya felt the blood drain from her face. She took a step back. "Is this some kind of joke?" He shook his head. "No, Zoya. This is just the beginning." Her phone buzzed again. She looked down at the screen. But this time, the message wasn't from the stranger. It was from an unknown number, and it sent a chill through her veins. "Stay away from him, or you'll regret it." She looked up at the stranger in shock, but he was already walking away, disappearing into the night, leaving her with nothing but questions. Zoya stood frozen in place, staring at her phone screen. "Stay away from him, or you'll regret it." A shiver ran down her spine. Her fingers trembled as she reread the message, hoping she had imagined it. But no, the words were still there, clear and chilling. She looked up, searching for the stranger, but he was already gone. The night had swallowed him whole. Her mind raced. Who had sent this message? How did they know she was talking to him? Was someone else watching her right now? Her breathing became uneven. The once familiar university courtyard now felt eerie, as if hidden eyes were lurking in the darkness. She quickly turned and walked back toward her hostel, her heart pounding with every step. The wind felt colder, the shadows darker. She tried to shake off the uneasiness, but the words from both the stranger and the unknown sender echoed in her head. Because your life is not as ordinary as you think. There are people who don't want you to know the truth. Stay away from him, or you'll regret it. A restless night. Zoya locked her room door behind her and leaned against it, trying to catch her breath. She wanted to believe this was all just a bad joke, but deep down, she knew something was wrong. She paced back and forth, debating what to do. Should she reply to the message? Should she tell someone? Finally, she took a deep breath and texted back. Who are you? What do you want? No response. Minutes passed. Then an hour. Still nothing. Frustrated and scared, Zoya threw her phone on the bed and hugged her knees. Sleep felt impossible. She kept glancing at her phone, waiting for a reply, but the screen remained dark. Sometime in the middle of the night, exhaustion took over, and she drifted into a restless sleep. The nightmare. Zoya found herself in a dimly lit corridor. The walls were old, cracked, covered in peeling paint. A single flickering bulb cast eerie shadows around her. She didn't know where she was or how she got there. She took a hesitant step forward. Suddenly, she heard whispers low, urgent voices echoing through the corridor. She turned her head, trying to find the source. Then footsteps. Slow, measured footsteps. Someone was coming toward her. She wanted to run, but her feet wouldn't move. Her heart pounded in her chest as the footsteps grew louder. A shadow emerged from the darkness. And then she saw him, the stranger from the courtyard. His face was partially hidden, just like before, but his eyes, those deep, intense eyes, stared directly at her. Zoya. His voice was barely above a whisper. She tried to speak, but no words came out. Then, without warning, the corridor began to crumble. The walls cracked apart. The ground beneath her feet trembled. She felt herself falling, sinking into darkness. And just before she hit the void, she heard one final whisper. Trust no one. A shocking discovery. Zoya jolted awake, gasping for breath. Her heart was racing, her body covered in cold sweat. It was just a dream. But why did it feel so real? She sat up and grabbed her phone, her fingers trembling as she checked for messages. And that's when she saw it. A new message from the same unknown number. But this time, it wasn't a warning. It was a picture. Zoya clicked on it, her breath catching in her throat. It was a photo of her, standing in the courtyard last night. And in the background, barely visible in the shadows, was the stranger. Someone had been watching. Someone had been there, hiding, waiting. Her stomach twisted with fear. She wasn't just being followed. She was being hunted. Shadows of the past. Zoya's fingers tightened around her phone as she stared at the photo. Her own image stood frozen on the screen. Her in the courtyard last night, unaware, vulnerable. But it wasn't just her. In the background, half hidden in the shadows, was the stranger she had spoken to. And worse, someone else had been there, watching them both. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. This wasn't just a prank. Someone was following her, documenting her every move. But why? Taking a shaky breath, she glanced at the sender's number. It was still unknown. She hesitated, then typed a response. Who are you? What do you want from me? A moment passed. Then, Her phone buzzed with a reply. "You're asking the wrong questions, Zoya. The real question is, who are you?" She felt the blood drain from her face. What was that supposed to mean? Before she could respond, a knock on her door made her jump. Her heart pounded as she stood up, cautiously walking toward it. She took a deep breath and opened the door. Aisha stood outside, arms crossed. "Okay, what's going on?" Zoya blinked.
"What?"
Aisha sighed and stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "You've been acting weird all week. You barely talk, you're always looking over your shoulder, and today in class, you didn't even notice when the professor called your name twice. Something's wrong. Spill it." Zoya hesitated. Should she tell Aisha? What if she put her in danger too? But before she could decide, her phone buzzed again. She glanced at the screen, and her stomach dropped. It was another message. But this time, it wasn't just words. It was another photo. A picture of her and Aisha, taken just now. From outside her door, Zoya's breath hitched. She felt the world tilt around her. Aisha frowned. "Zoya, what is it?" Slowly, Zoya turned the screen toward her friend. Aisha's eyes widened as she saw the picture. Her face paled. "Oh my God." Zoya's voice came out barely above a whisper. "Someone is here. Right now." Aisha grabbed her wrist. "We need to leave. Now." Without wasting another second, they rushed out of the room, Zoya's heart hammering against her ribs. But as soon as they stepped into the hallway, Zoya stopped in her tracks. A figure stood at the far end, leaning casually against the wall. His face was shadowed, but she knew who it was. The stranger. He was waiting for her.
"Why?"
Aisha whispered, fear in her voice. "Zoya, who is that?" Zoya swallowed hard. The only one who might have answers. And this time, she wasn't going to let him disappear. She stepped forward. "Tell me everything. Right now." The stranger exhaled, as if he had been expecting this moment. Then, in a calm voice, he said something that sent a shiver down Zoya's spine. "Zoya, they're after you because of your past. A past you don't remember." She froze. What past? His expression darkened. The one they tried to erase. The hidden truth. Zoya felt her world tilt. The past they tried to erase? Her voice was barely above a whisper, her mind racing with possibilities. The stranger, his gaze sharp and unreadable, nodded.
"Yes."
The life you don't remember. The life they don't want you to know about. Aisha tightened her grip on Zoya's arm, her voice filled with fear.
"Who are you?
And what the hell are you talking about?" The stranger glanced around the empty hallway before taking a step closer. His voice was low but urgent. "This is not the place to talk. They're watching us. We need to leave, now." Zoya hesitated. Every instinct in her screamed to run, to stay away from this mysterious man and his cryptic warnings. But deep down, a part of her knew. He wasn't lying. She had felt it for days. The strange messages, the feeling of being watched, the nightmares. Something was wrong. And if this man had answers, she needed to hear them. She exhaled sharply and nodded.
"Fine.
Let's go." Aisha's eyes widened.
"Zoya."
"Are you serious?" Zoya turned to her. "Aisha, I need to know the truth. I can't live in fear anymore." Aisha hesitated, then sighed. "Then I'm coming with you." The stranger looked annoyed, but didn't argue. "We don't have time. Follow me." A secret meeting. The stranger led them through dark, empty streets until they reached an old bookstore tucked away in a quiet alley. The neon sign above flickered weakly. Antique books and records. He unlocked the door and motioned them inside. The shop was filled with the scent of aged paper and ink. Rows of bookshelves stretched toward the ceiling, dust particles floating in the dim yellow light. Aisha whispered, "What is this place?" The stranger locked the door behind them. "A safe place. For now." Zoya crossed her arms. "Enough secrets."
Who are you?
"And what do you know about me?" The man exhaled and finally spoke. "My name is Rayyan, and I have been watching over you since the day you were born." Silence. Zoya's breath caught. "Since I was born?" Rayyan nodded. "You're not who you think you are, Zoya. Your real identity was hidden from you to keep you safe. But now, they found you." Aisha scoffed. "Who are they?" Rayyan's jaw tightened. "The people who erased Zoya's past. The people who will do anything to keep her from remembering." Zoya felt lightheaded. "Why would someone erase my past? What's so special about me?" Rayyan hesitated, then pulled something from his pocket, a small, folded piece of paper. He handed it to Zoya. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. It was an old photograph, a picture of a little girl. She had deep brown eyes, a soft, innocent smile. Zoya's heart stopped. It was her. But standing beside her in the photo was a woman she didn't recognize, a woman with kind eyes and a warm smile. Zoya whispered, "Who is this?" Rayyan's voice was soft but firm. "Your mother." Zoya flinched.
No.
"That's impossible. My mother is at home. I just talked to her this morning." Rayyan shook his head. "The woman you call your mother, she loves you, but she is not your real mother." Zoya's hands shook as she stared at the photograph. Her mind refused to accept it. "No, this can't be true." Rayyan took a deep breath. "Zoya, your real mother was murdered, and you were the only witness." Zoya's body went cold. Aisha gasped, "Oh my God." Zoya's voice was barely a whisper. "No, this isn't real. You're lying." Rayyan's expression darkened. "I wish I was. But the people who killed her, they erased your memory. They made sure you would never remember what happened that night." Zoya stumbled back, her mind reeling. Her entire life. Was it all a lie? Tears burned her eyes. Why would someone do this to me? Rayyan's gaze was full of sorrow. "Because you saw something you weren't supposed to. And now they know you're starting to remember." Zoya's heart pounded in terror. That's why she was being followed. That's why she was being warned. She wasn't just a random target. She was the key to a deadly secret. Aisha grabbed Zoya's hand. "We need to go to the police." Rayyan's voice was sharp.
No.
"The police can't protect her. The people after Zoya, they're powerful. And they won't stop until she's silenced forever." Zoya's knees felt weak. Her past wasn't just erased. It was buried in blood. And now, the ones who buried it were coming for her. The chase begins. Zoya's hands trembled as she clutched the old photograph. The image of the woman Rayyan claimed was her real mother, burned into her mind. Her world had just shattered into pieces. Her past wasn't what she thought. Her memories weren't real. And now, the people who had erased her past were coming for her. She looked up at Rayyan, her voice hoarse. If what you're saying is true, then why am I still alive? If they kill my mother, why didn't they kill me too? Rayyan exhaled, his eyes filled with an emotion Zoya couldn't decipher. Because you were just a child. You wouldn't have understood what you saw. But if you ever remembered you'd become a threat. Aisha's voice was sharp. Then why are they after her now? What changed? Rayyan hesitated, then pulled out his phone. He tapped a few times and turned the screen toward them. A news article flashed on the screen. The headline sent chills down Zoya's spine. Business tycoon Hassan Rayyan found dead in mysterious circumstances. Zoya's breath caught. She didn't recognize the name, but something about it made her uneasy. She read the article. Hassan Rayyan, a well-known businessman, was found dead last night. Police are investigating the case, but initial reports suggest foul play. Hassan was previously linked to several corruption scandals, though no charges were ever proven. Authorities are refusing to comment on any possible suspects. Zoya looked up. What does this have to do with me? Rayyan's jaw tightened. Because Hassan Rayyan wasn't just a businessman. He was one of the men responsible for your mother's murder. The room spun. Aisha whispered in shock. Oh my God. Zoya's heart pounded. You're saying the people who killed my mother are still out there? And now one of them is dead. Rayyan nodded. And that's why they're panicking. If someone is coming after them, they'll suspect you. They'll think you remember more than you do. And they'll want to silence you before it's too late. Zoya's throat went dry. This was no longer just a mystery. This was a hunt. And she was the prey. The escape. A sudden crash outside made all three of them jump. Rayyan's eyes snapped to the door. They're here. Aisha gasped. What? Already? How? Rayyan cursed under his breath. They must have been watching us. We need to go.
Now.
Zoya's pulse skyrocketed. Where? Before Rayyan could answer, the doorknob twisted. Someone was trying to get in. Aisha let out a strangled whisper. Oh my God, oh my God. Rayyan grabbed Zoya's wrist and pulled her toward the back of the bookstore. Come with me, and don't look back. Aisha followed, her breath coming in panicked gasps. Behind them, the door burst open with a loud bang. Zoya turned her head for just a second, and her blood ran cold. Two men in black suits. Cold eyes. Guns in their hands. The moment their eyes met hers, one of them raised his gun.
Bang.
A bullet tore through the bookshelf beside her, sending a shower of splintered wood into the air. Zoya screamed. Rayyan yanked her into a hidden back door. Run. They sprinted down a dark, narrow alley behind the bookstore. More gunshots rang out. Zoya's lungs burned as she ran. Aisha tripped, but Rayyan caught her, dragging her forward. The men were still behind them, gaining. Zoya's heart slammed against her ribs. She had never run for her life before, and she never thought she'd have to. Nowhere is safe. They finally reached an abandoned parking lot, breathless and shaken. Rayyan pressed himself against the wall, peeking around the corner. The men weren't in sight, yet. Aisha was gasping for air. What the hell was that? Zoya wiped sweat from her forehead, her hands still shaking. Who are they? Rayyan's voice was grim. The ones who erased your past. The ones who will do anything to keep you from the truth. Zoya felt a wave of nausea. Her entire life, she had lived peacefully, normally. But now, nothing was normal anymore. She was being chased by killers. She was at the center of a secret she didn't even remember. And she had no idea how to stop any of it. Aisha grabbed Zoya's arm. "We can't do this alone. We need help." Zoya turned to Rayyan. "What do we do now?" Rayyan's expression was unreadable. Then he said something that sent chills down her spine. "Now we find the only person who knows the full truth." Zoya frowned.
Who?
Rayyan met her gaze. "Your father." Zoya's heart stopped. "My father is dead." Rayyan's eyes darkened. "No, Zoya.
He's not.
He's alive. The man who knows everything." Zoya's mind went blank. Her father alive? It wasn't possible. She had grown up believing he had died when she was just a baby. Her mother never spoke much about him. And now, Rayyan was telling her that everything was a lie? Aisha's voice shook. "Rayyan, are you messing with us? Because this isn't funny." Rayyan's expression was deadly serious. "I wouldn't joke about this. Zoya's father is alive, and he's the only one who can tell her the full truth." Zoya swallowed hard. "If he's alive, where has he been all these years? Why did he leave me?" Rayyan sighed. "Because he had no choice." Silence filled the dark parking lot. Aisha shifted uncomfortably. "And let me guess, he's in hiding too?" Rayyan nodded. "More like imprisoned." Zoya felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you mean?" Rayyan hesitated before speaking. "Your father, Zoya, he wasn't just any man. He was once part of the same powerful group that is after you now. But when he fell in love with your mother, he tried to leave. He tried to protect both of you. And for that, they punished him." Zoya's heartbeat thundered in her ears. "Punished him? How?" Rayyan exhaled sharply. "They framed him for a crime he didn't commit and locked him away in a secret facility. No official records, no chance of appeal. As far as the world knows, he doesn't exist anymore." Zoya's fingers clenched into fists. "Then how do you know he's still alive?" Rayyan's gaze was steady. "Because I've seen him." Zoya's breath hitched.
When?
"A week ago." The words hit her like a thunderbolt. Aisha's eyes widened. "Wait."
What?
Rayyan nodded. "I found out about his location recently. He's being kept in a high-security underground prison outside the city. But I couldn't get to him alone." Zoya's mind reeled. Her father wasn't dead. He had been suffering, locked away, forgotten. Because he loved her mother. Because he tried to protect them. And now, the same people who destroyed his life were after her. Zoya took a deep breath. "Then we're getting him out." Aisha choked. "I'm sorry, what?" Rayyan looked at her, surprised. "You're serious?" Zoya's jaw tightened. "Of course I'm serious. My whole life has been a lie. If my father is the only person who can tell me the truth, then I have to find him. I have to save him." Aisha ran a hand through her hair. "Zoya, I love you, but are you insane? This is not a high school drama. These people are killers. They will murder us before we even get close to that prison." Zoya turned to Rayyan. "Do you have a plan?" Rayyan smirked. "I do. But it's dangerous." Aisha threw her hands in the air. "Of course it is." Zoya's voice was steady. "Tell me." Rayyan pulled out a folded map from his pocket and spread it on the ground. This is where he's being held. He pointed to a remote location in the mountains. It's an off-the-books facility. No records, no legal existence. Only a few people even know it's there. Zoya studied the map. How do we get in? Rayyan's expression darkened. That's the hard part. It's not just a prison, it's a fortress. Armed guards, surveillance, biometric security. Breaking in is impossible. Aisha groaned. Then why are we even discussing this? Rayyan smirked. Because there's one way inside. Zoya met his gaze.
How?
Rayyan's eyes gleamed. We don't break in. We let them take us. Zoya's stomach twisted. What do you mean? Rayyan leaned forward. They already want you, Zoya. If we play this right, they'll capture us and take us inside. Once we're in, we find your father and get out. Aisha gaped at him. That is the dumbest plan I've ever heard. Zoya ignored her and focused on Rayyan. And how do we get out? Rayyan smirked. That's the part I'm still working on. Aisha threw up her hands.
No.
I am not doing this. You want to walk into a death trap.
Be my guest.
But count me out. Zoya turned to her, her voice soft. Aisha, I understand if you don't want to come. You don't have to. Aisha sighed heavily, rubbing her temples. You're my best friend, Zoya. How can I let you do this alone? Zoya gave her a small smile. You've already done enough. You don't have to risk your life for me. Aisha exhaled sharply. Then, after a long pause, she groaned. I hate you for this. Zoya's smile widened. I love you too. Rayyan rolled up the map. We don't have much time. If we're doing this, we need to move fast. The people after you will come back, and next time they won't miss. Zoya took a deep breath. She wasn't just running anymore. She was fighting for the truth, even if it meant walking straight into the enemy's hands. Because now she had a mission. Find her father, learn the truth, and make the people who stole her past pay, no matter what it took. The trap. The plan was set. Zoya, Rayyan, and Aisha were about to do something insane. They weren't just running from danger anymore. They were walking straight into it. Rayyan had explained everything. The only way to get inside the secret facility where Zoya's father was imprisoned was to let the enemy capture them. And that meant making sure they were caught on their own terms. The three of them sat inside an old, abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city, waiting for the moment to come. Zoya's heart pounded in her chest. Are you sure this will work? She asked Rayyan. Rayyan leaned against a rusted metal crate, arms crossed. They're already watching us. They want you, Zoya. They won't pass up the chance to take you in. Aisha shivered. Great. So, we're basically serving ourselves on a silver platter. Rayyan smirked. Pretty much. Aisha glared at him. You enjoy this way too much. Zoya exhaled sharply. She had no idea what would happen once they were inside the facility. Would they even get the chance to find her father? Or would they be killed the moment they were caught? But she had no choice. She had to do this. And so, they waited. The arrival. It didn't take long. Barely an hour had passed when the warehouse was suddenly flooded with blinding headlights. Aisha gasped, shielding her eyes. Oh, hell no. Zoya's pulse skyrocketed as she heard the screech of multiple vehicles stopping outside. Rayyan remained calm. Showtime. Heavy footsteps echoed as a group of men entered. dressed in black, armed with guns, their faces cold and unreadable. One of them stepped forward. "Zoya." His voice was sharp, almost amused. "We've been looking for you." Zoya straightened her shoulders. "I figured." The man smirked. "Come with us. Quietly, or we'll have to make things messy." Aisha whispered frantically. "This is a terrible idea. I hate this plan." Rayyan shot her a look. "Just stick to it." The man nodded at his team. "Take them." Within seconds, Zoya, Rayyan, and Aisha were grabbed, their wrists zip-tied behind their backs. Aisha hissed, "This is so humiliating." Zoya kept her breathing steady as she was dragged toward a black SUV. She didn't know what was waiting for her inside that facility, but she knew one thing. She would find her father, and she would get out.
The facility.
The drive was long. Hours passed in silence, the SUV moving steadily toward a destination unknown. Zoya peered through the tinted windows, watching as the city disappeared and the wilderness took over. Mountains.
Trees.
Isolation. They were far from civilization now. Aisha groaned beside her. "I swear, if we die, I'm haunting both of you." Rayyan chuckled. "Noted." Finally, the vehicle slowed. A massive iron gate loomed ahead, guarded by heavily armed men. Beyond it, a high-tech facility stood in the shadows of the mountains. Zoya's heart clenched. This was it. The SUV passed through the gates. The moment they stopped, the doors were thrown open, and rough hands pulled them out. The cold night air bit at Zoya's skin. A man in a crisp suit approached. Unlike the others, he wasn't holding a weapon, but there was something far more dangerous in his expression. Confidence.
Power. Control.
His piercing eyes settled on Zoya. "Welcome home." Zoya's blood ran cold. She didn't recognize him, but he knew exactly who she was. The interrogation. They were separated immediately. Aisha screamed in protest as she was dragged away.
Zoya.
"Don't let them kill me, you jerks." Rayyan was shoved in the opposite direction, his expression unreadable. Zoya was led down a long, sterile hallway. The walls were white. The air smelled of metal and disinfectant. This place wasn't just a prison. It was a laboratory. She was forced into a cold, empty room, her hands still tied. The man in the suit stepped inside, closing the door behind him. He took a seat across from her, adjusting his cuffs. "You have no idea how long we've been waiting for you, Zoya." Zoya's jaw clenched. "Who are you?" The man smirked. "You can call me Mr. Shah." Zoya didn't respond. She had nothing to say to him. Shah leaned back in his chair. "Do you know why you're here?" Zoya glared. "Because you kidnapped me?" Shah chuckled.
No, Zoya.
"You're here because of who you are. Because of what you carry." Zoya frowned. "What are you talking about?" Shah's smile widened. "Your mother never told you, did she? About the secret inside you?" Zoya's stomach twisted. "What secret?" Shah stood up, walking toward her. "Your mother and your father weren't ordinary people, Zoya. And neither are you." Zoya's breath hitched. "What do you mean?" Shah leaned down, whispering near her ear. "You, my dear, are the key to everything. The final truth." Zoya's heart pounded in her chest. "The key to everything?" she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. Mr. Shah smirked, stepping back with a look of amusement. Yes, Zoya. And it's time you learned the truth about who you really are. Zoya clenched her fists. Enough with the riddles. Tell me what you want from me. Shah sighed, as if he were dealing with a stubborn child. Patience, my dear. Let's start with your father. Zoya stiffened. Where is he? Shah's smile didn't falter.
Alive.
For now. Zoya's blood boiled. I want to see him. Shah raised a brow. And what will you do if I refuse? You're completely at my mercy here. Zoya glared at him, but he was right. She was trapped.
For now.
Shah sighed dramatically.
Fine.
Since I'm in a generous mood, I'll take you to him. Zoya's breath hitched. You will?
Yes.
Shah's smirk widened. But be warned, what you're about to see will change everything. The reunion. The guards untied her hands, but kept a tight grip on her arms as they led her through the cold, sterile hallways. Zoya's mind was spinning. What was Shah talking about? What truth was she about to learn? Finally, they stopped outside a heavy steel door. Shah nodded at a guard, who pressed a code into a keypad. With a loud click, the door unlocked. The guard shoved Zoya inside. Her breath caught in her throat. There, sitting on a small cot, was a man. His hair was graying, his face lined with exhaustion. His clothes were worn, but his eyes were the same as hers. Tears welled up in Zoya's eyes. Papas? The man lifted his head, his expression a mix of shock and disbelief. Zoya? For a moment, neither of them moved. Then, in a heartbeat, Zoya ran to him, falling into his arms. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she clung to him. I thought you were dead. They told me you were dead. Her father's voice was hoarse. They lied to you, Beta. Just like they lied about everything else. Zoya pulled back, searching his face. Tell me the truth. Who are you? Why did they do this to you? Her father exhaled deeply. Because of what's inside you, Zoya. Because of what you carry in your blood. Zoya's stomach twisted. What are you talking about? Shah, who had been watching the reunion with amusement, finally spoke. Your mother and father were part of a secret project, Zoya. A project that created something unique. Something powerful. And that power runs in your veins. Zoya's head snapped toward him. What do you mean? Shah's smile was cold. Your blood, my dear, is not ordinary. It holds the key to a formula scientists have been chasing for decades. A formula that can change the world. Zoya's breath caught. A formula? Her father's grip on her hands tightened. It's true, Zoya. When your mother was pregnant with you, she was given an experimental serum. It was supposed to create the perfect human, one with enhanced intelligence, strength, and resistance to diseases. The experiment failed on everyone else. But on you, Zoya felt dizzy. No, this can't be true. Her father's eyes softened. It is. That's why they took me. That's why they want you. They need your blood to complete their research. Zoya shook her head, stepping back. You're saying, I'm some kind of experiment. Shah chuckled. More like the final piece of a puzzle. Zoya's breathing became uneven. All her life, she had thought she was ordinary. But she wasn't. She was something more. Something dangerous. The escape plan. Zoya's mind raced. She needed to get out. She needed to get her father out. But how? Shah wasn't going to let them walk away. Just then, the steel door burst open.
Boom.
A cloud of smoke filled the room. Zoya coughed, shielding her eyes. Through the haze, she saw two figures rush in, Rayyan and Aisha. Aisha was holding a smoke grenade, coughing. Ugh, I hate this. Why do I always agree to your stupid plans? Rayyan grabbed Zoya's wrist. No time to talk. We're leaving. Zoya's heart soared with hope. My father. Rayyan nodded. We're taking him too. Before the guards could react, Rayyan pulled out a gun and fired.
Bang. Bang.
The bullets hit the security cameras. The lights flickered. Chaos erupted. Zoya grabbed her father's hand. Come on. Shah's voice rang out through the smoke. You won't escape, Zoya. We will find you. But she didn't care. She was done being their prisoner. She was done being their experiment.
She was going to be free.
The final run. The group ran through the facility, dodging guards, alarms blaring around them. Rayyan had memorized the layout. The exit is this way. They burst through a steel door into the night air. A black SUV was waiting. Aisha dived into the driver's seat. Get in. Zoya helped her father into the car and jumped in. Rayyan slammed the door shut. Drive. Aisha floored the gas. The SUV sped down the mountain roads as gunfire rang out behind them. Zoya's hands trembled as she looked at her father. We did it. We got you out. Tears streamed down his face. I never thought I'd see the sky again. Zoya gripped his hand tightly. She still didn't know what the future held. She still didn't understand everything about herself. But she knew one thing. She wasn't running anymore. She was fighting. And she would never stop. Not until she uncovered every secret they had tried to bury. Not until she destroyed the people who had stolen her family. She would return, stronger. And this time she wouldn't lose. The end. Don't forget to subscribe, share, like this channel.